It's time to turn down the noise and tune in to News You Can Use, the show that gives you a quick insight into the latest twists and turns in healthcare news, where every diagnosis comes with an order of side-splitting humor. Your hosts are Dr. Nick, a longtime host, innovator, and healthcare wizard who can prescribe a digital dose of innovation to cure even the most ailing operational inefficiencies. And Dr. Craig Joseph, the healthcare guru who can diagnose both patient and software glitches with equal precision, making sure hospitals run smoother than a well-oiled robot doc. So buckle up, because we're diving into the ER of excitement, the ICU of irrationality, and the waiting room of wacky wisdom. Now here's Dr. Nick and Dr. Craig.
Welcome to the month of July. I'm Dr. Nick.
And I'm Dr. Craig.
This week, we'll be dissecting the latest healthcare news, unraveling the twists and turns, and making sense of all of those debacles.
Just remember, life's a lot like a breaking news story. Unpredictable, often absurd, and occasionally leaves you wondering if it's all just a cosmic prank.
This week, we take a look at management by walking around.
And we ask, will everything, just everything, be better with AI?
But first off this week, we're going to talk about AMDIS, or the American Medical Directors Information Society, that both Craig and I attended last week. It was last week.
It was.
Sometimes it's, well, I'm just going to, in my defense, I had to take a red eye. Well, I didn't have to, but I took a red eye home. And I realized how little sleep I got. First, because my online monitoring tool told me that I got very little sleep, but then the following night I slept for a solid 14 hours. So I think I got both nights the following day. So I'm still a little bit discombobulated. But anyway, AMDIS, been around for a while. They certainly have a destination event, right? I think it's one of your favorite spots, isn't it, Craig?
It is. They always meet in June in Ojai, California, Ojai, Ojai, California, which is one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen. It doesn't involve an ocean. It involves a valley, not far from the ocean, but there's no water opportunities here. It's beautiful.
It also has a little bit of history associated with it that you discovered on this particular visit, and you've been probably more times than I have, I suspect. What significant Hollywood character is associated, or characters is associated with Ojai, California?
Yeah, well, I actually learned this maybe a year or two ago. My hygienist at my dentist was I mentioned to her that I was going to Ojai, and she said, Ojai, the home of the Bionic woman. And I looked at her like, I'm not sure I trust you now to jab very sharp metal pieces of, instruments into my mouth. But in fact, she was right. Both the character for the $6 Million Man and the Bionic Woman were both from Ojai, California. And in several episodes, and I know all of this because of the internet, I can't say that I've seen the episodes, but I'd love to see them if I could. There were several episodes where the Bionic Woman lost her memory, and they took her back to Ojai to see if being around, places where she grew up would help her. I'm not sure if it did or not. I don't want to ruin it for anyone. I don't know, but even if I did know, I wouldn't tell you. But yeah,
no spoilers here, folks.
No spoilers here. for TV series from the 1970s. We will not ruin it for you.
So I certainly don't remember those episodes, but I do remember that series. I remember both those series. And I remember enjoying them, but I have seen them subsequently, and boy, do they date pretty poorly, I'm just going to say.
I have to say that I love 70s TV shows for the very reason that they remind you of a different time. Sometimes good, sometimes cringy, but boy, oh boy, it's stuff like that often would not get made now. And of course, $6 million. I mean, it's not even that much money to 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 rebuild an astronaut. That would be a lot more expensive now.
Correct. Yes. So, well, as we step into AMDIS and move on from our 70s TV, perhaps we're jumping the shark. He says with this clever association that I only learned about. That was Fonzie, right?
Yeah, that was Arthur Fonzarello. Yes.
So let me start, if I may, on AMDIS. So always love the conference. I think it's a collection of medical informatics types of various titles, various roles. Certainly when it started, and it started a long time ago, it was a pretty lonely space. There weren't a lot of folks. They got together. I think this was as much support for each other as well as mutual learning. It has a very active listserv, which I continue to track. It's shows up with queries, and in fact, there's now a searchable area that allows you to go and look at that knowledge that's included in the exchanges. The conference itself, once a year, comes with a few extra things. I did the AI sort of intro, I want to say boot camp. I'm not sure I did that at the outset, which I enjoyed. And in fact, it felt like that was almost maybe not the only thing, but it really was the focus. I think AI was really the center of attention for the whole of the conference. And, that was good and bad. I think there are other things that we need to be thinking about, but we're not. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I was looking over the list of sessions, and AI was probably there for half of them. So I guess that's a thing. Although we've seen things before that didn't pan out, but I think this one is going to pan out. I agree with you. Yeah, when this conference started, there was no such thing as a chief medical information officer or chief health information officer, and it was really just physicians who were interested in technology, and that was back in the day when technology was always involved in healthcare, but more so like in the operating room or in the radiology suite, not so much in the doctor's office every single day, day in and day out. And that's where we're at today. Of course, you'd be hard pressed to find anyone who uses paper to write down what's going on with you. And so, yeah, it's really important, and it's great once a year. It's not the only opportunity, but it's a good opportunity to see people, see what they're doing, hear about their successes. What I really enjoy about this conference is actually hearing about people's failures as well. And that's been, you don't generally go to other conferences and hear people talk about stuff that they did that didn't work out. And that's really important and quite helpful. And so usually there's one or two sessions of things that didn't work out either professionally. So like, hey, I got fired. This is what happened. And you'd say, well, no one's going to go to a conference and talk about how they got fired. Oh, absolutely. They've done that before and did that again to some extent. But also, hey, we tried this thing with this technology with these patients, and it didn't work out as we expected. And here's how we made it better. Or here's where we decided this is not ready for prime time, and we're just going to back off and go back to the way it was. And so, yeah, it was a good time.
Yeah, and there were some extra sessions hosted by some of the vendors that were there. I went to the one of the vendors, not obviously, but they included AI. This was they're really trying to focus on, as they described it, the 73%, which was an interesting statistic. That's the amount of time that physicians spend with their noses in the computers or technology rather than focusing on the patient. And one of the founders has written, I'm going to call it the Bible. I might be, forgive me if I'm not, because I opened the first few pages of this, Fundamentals of Deep Learning, and I was lost immediately. This is really deep stuff, but actually really fascinating to hear. And I heard, I think one of the most standout demos I heard was a conversational AI that not only was processing the inbound, but actually spoke back. And I swear you would not know that it wasn't technology. It was as if it was a person. And I had to ask, because I've heard a few of them, but they're not very common. But this is how they're doing it. It's a conversational interaction to try and bring people out and do some of the administrative work. That for me was super impressive. I was pretty much blown away. Now, narrow use case. I think if I came away with one thing from all of this, it was still no generalized AI. I think that's the major area. But in terms of applicability, I think we'll see and are seeing functions, but in sort of narrow areas that don't necessarily move into other areas. Do you think that's fair or not?
I think we're seeing changes everywhere. But to your point, it's one of those things where I think with the basic, and let's be honest, the things that we're seeing today are basic. The things in that Bible, that book you were talking about, even though they're inscrutable to you and I, are probably pretty basic for what's going on. We can really quickly get to 80 to 90% of whatever that thing is that we want it to do. It's always the last 10 or 20% that become more complicated. And I think today what we're seeing in healthcare often is, we've made this huge jump, and the information that's presented to patients or to physicians is pretty right most of the time. It's pretty good most of the time. And if you're an expert, that's actually amazing, because I know what I'm going to say when a patient sends me a message from the portal saying, I had this test and this thing and this doctor said that. I always know what I'm going to say. And if the AI can propose to me what I was going to say before I have to say it, and I look at it and like, yeah, it's great, perfect, send. Maybe change one little word here or there. But when it's wrong, like, oh God, no, that's not the exact opposite. Well, since I'm an expert in this particular field, I can say, oh my God, it's completely wrong, and just delete it. And the problem, right, of course, is that most patients don't know. They don't have that expertise in the field. They're not supposed to. And so if they were to get something, it always sounds, anything that an AI generates sounds very impressive and correct. And so that's the concern. So yeah, I think what we're seeing is people trying to focus down like a laser the AI, so that it won't hallucinate or make it be much more likely that it's going to be correct. And even if it's not quite as good, if it's not wrong, that's a big play. And so that's probably where the work's going to happen in the next 2 or 3 years, where we can be confident that it's not going to totally mess up the situation. Maybe I'm trying to get it to be a resident physician. I don't know. Is that acceptable to be a resident? They still make mistakes. They're young.
I think even at the higher levels, they're making mistakes, right? I mean, it's just removing as much of that error as possible. I mean, is it better? This discussion reminds me a lot of the self-driving cars. Great, the self-driving car is better than a human for the most part, but then as soon as you start to get to the edge cases, it's not, because if it's got to make decisions, what are the ethics of those decisions? Not that people are any better, and it's highly dependent on the other cars. And if all the other cars are being driven by people, then there's too many random elements that they can't predict. So you need to have it completely rolled out. So it feels very deep is the only word I can think of right here. But you presented your specific area of expertise, and in fact your book, Designing for Health, and specifically about design decisions. Any key insights that you think people should really understand about this?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you. You were openly weeping at the conference after
I
my
was,
talk.
but it wasn't about your talk. It was about the clothes you were wearing. But
I misinterpreted that. I'm sorry. I thought you were really moved by my talk about design and healthcare.
Oh yes, yeah, totally.
No, I'm a big when we talk about design, I'm not talking about color coordinating your outfit. I'm talking. Yeah.
Now I get it.
See, that's why you should pay attention during some of these talks and stay off your
I was
social
looking
media.
at you, the
Dr.
color of
Nick.
your shirt, going, "What the hell is this?"
It was a lovely shirt. Designing designing with keeping in mind how humans think. It's called human-centered design. Certainly has been around for decades and decades. And my main message at the conference and after the conference and before the conference is, hey, sometimes we design things in healthcare, or we let them happen without intentional design. And we make it difficult for people to do the right thing. We make it difficult for them to give us the information that we want. We make it difficult for people to pay the bill. Most of us want to pay a bill when we get one from our doctor or hospital, assuming that we're happy with the care that we got. But it's so difficult. You get different bills from different people, and sometimes the first bill is not exactly right. And you pay them money, and then you find out they owe you money back, and all of that's very complicated. And can't we make it easier? And I think the answer is yes, we can. But we have to understand how people think, how they process information, and then design our workflows, design our technology and our tools to make the outcome that we all want to be the easy thing. The most obvious.
I mean, the thing that I took away from this was especially, and I know there were multiples, but it was the default. Make the default the easy.
I was just going to talk about that. Yeah. So when I talk to physicians, I love to bring outside non-healthcare examples so that you can see that the rest of the world has moved on and we need to catch up. And this one study I reference, it's a study, but it has to do with finances. There was an employer who wanted to improve their 401k, their employees' 401k participation, and they did one thing. And as you kind of alluded to, that one thing made a big difference. And the one thing was, before, when you joined the company as a new employee, you had to opt in to having some money automatically withdrawn from your paycheck to go into a 401k tax-free, which would be often met by the company you're working for. So it's huge. It's kind of a no-brainer. If you can afford to do it, you absolutely should do it. And about 49% of their employees did that. And then they changed it to an opt-out system, meaning they told new employees, hey, we are going to automatically sign you up to take 1% or 2% of your salary and your pay and put it into a 401k for you. And if you don't want us to do that, that's okay. You don't have to have us do that. But if you don't want to, then you got to sign here. And their numbers went up to 86%, right? So from 49 to 86, simply by changing the default. And it works similarly in healthcare, whether you're a patient or a physician. If I know what the right thing is for a physician to do, meaning I have a set of orders for patients who are being admitted for a common thing like community-acquired pneumonia. And so, if you've got pneumonia and you've been on oral antibiotics at home and they're not working, you need to come in for some stronger stuff. Hey, give physicians a list of the orders that typically should be used. And then, as you mentioned, default in the ones that are really key. So, for instance, hey, this is the best antibiotic. It works great. It doesn't cost very much money. It doesn't have a lot of side effects. This is the one, doctor, that you should use most of the time. Not always, but most of the time. Why would you not? Maybe they're allergic. Maybe the patient was on this form of antibiotic before they came in. There are reasons not to use it, but most of the time, the 80% rule is they're going to use this one, default that choice in. And it's kind of shocking as how many hospitals and healthcare systems don't kind of make use of that.
Simple, low cost.
Low cost, easy for everyone, easy for the doctor. I don't have to think about it. I'm still responsible, of course.
And no AI involved.
None.
Not a one. Speaking of which, what can AI not do?
That's a trick question. There's nothing AI can't do, Nick. We all know that.
I'm sorry. There are some easy answers here. I don't think AI can watch a game of cricket and understand it.
No, but no human can do that either, Nick. That's
no American human.
There's a sticky wicket,
yeah,
and no one can. It's impossible to understand cricket. So let's go on to a better example.
Cannot be creative.
But it can. Well, you're right. You are right. Cannot be creative. However, it can spur creativity. It can. So I was joking, of course, when I said there's nothing it can't do. But there's lots of things it can do pretty well, right? So you can actually say, "Hey, write a blog post for me." It's often pretty boring and anodyne, and
so no change from the ordinary blog post.
No, it fits right in for my my
it's
style.
Perfect for you.
For me, it's perfect, but for people who have skills, it's not so good. But it is good at, you can say, it's from a creative standpoint, it's good at helping you become more creative. Hey, I'm interested in examples of this or that, and give me some examples. And again, it might give you some things that are you've already thought of. And you're like, well, that's not helpful. It might give you some things that sound amazing that you hadn't thought of. And many of those might be true, but some of those won't. So anything it gives you, you got to double check, but it can kind of push you in the right direction. As you alluded to, I co-wrote a book, and I was giving it to a chief information officer at a big health system. And she said to me, "What, you think I'm just going to take this book without a very nice signature and message from you?" And I said, "Oh, what do you want?" She goes, I demand a poem. You need to write a poem for me." And I think she was being sarcastic, but I said, "That's no problem." And then I asked ChatGPT right in front of her at dinner to write a short
poem. And then
I said, "Write a short poem about user-centered design and chief information officers in healthcare." And that was it. And it did. It was great. It was great. It was dumb, and it rhymed quite nicely, and it was perfect because it was a gag. But that kind of thing, I think AI is very helpful with. I think, to get more seriously, to answer your question, though, about what is AI not good at, let's talk about the converse. What's it really good at? It seems really good at looking through lots and lots and lots of data.
Oh, it is.
Right? And so I was mentioning to you before we started recording today that just this morning, I saw two articles. One said, "Wow, AI is really good when it comes to looking at CT scans and diagnosing pulmonary emboli." Yeah, which again, I think radiologists think they're pretty good at it too. But AI can do it faster. And so kind of present like, "Hey, of all the CT scans, Dr. Radiologist, look at these two right now. Even though there's 20 before it, look at these two right now." That's super helpful. And another was using the pulse ox, which is that little kind of little red thing that you put on your finger to check your oxygen. Or in kids, we often put it on their feet. The pulse ox is being used, just that, and really, again, that number just tells us the percent oxygenation, can be used to diagnose cyanotic heart disease in newborns, often before the pediatrician does or can. And so that's amazing. Again, how does it do that? Data, lots and lots of data, lots of data that we don't even see as humans. All we see is a blinking number that's usually like 93 or 95 or something like that. But there's tons of other data points that are behind the scenes used to get to that number. Give all of that to an AI, it does amazing things.
And that opens the door, which we won't have time for today, to talk about the things that you can hack or change in AI by creating signs that only the AI can read, with essentially invisible components, and you can create all sorts of traffic jams. There's been all sorts of misbehavior around that, but that's for another moment. In the remaining time that we have, management by walking around.
Yeah, this was Jack Welch said this, and I've been a big proponent and mentioned it in my talk last week. Hey, getting out there and actually seeing what's happening. whether you're working in a hospital or on a factory floor, getting management out of the C-suite. And it's one thing to read reports about what's happening. It's another to actually walk around, ask doctors, nurses in the hospital, ask patients how they've been treated. That's how you get to the root of any quality issues or performance improvement. Really, that's the key. So get out and actually talk to people and ignore the layers of bureaucracy between you and the person doing the work.
And you also have an appreciation of the job. I did some years back presentation with Hilton at the Health Information Management Society, HIMSS meeting. And one of the things that they require their senior execs to do is to spend 3 days in hotels, small, all part of the brands. And the individual that I was on the stage with described this and how much of an appreciation she had for how difficult and backbreaking it is to make that many beds. And that was just one element of, the work. So I always say this: walk a day in the shoes. But we find ourselves at the end of another episode exploring healthcare's mysteries before they become your emergencies. Until next time, I'm Dr. Nick.
And I'm Dr. Craig.